We've covered these changing expectations. We've covered new solutions in the market. We've covered that you still need that talent component of the program. So I do have a question for the group. We've had 3 traditional patient support models in the history of the specialty pharma space. Knowing that there are all of these changes in technology and changes in HCPs and patients' expectations, I'm curious if the models that we had today are still what we need moving forward. So I'll briefly go over the 3 traditional patient support program models with you, and then we'll get to our question. And these are loose definitions. So outsourced we see is typically when a manufacturer outsources all or almost all of their patient support services, like access, affordability, and adherence to one outside vendor or several outside vendors. Hybrid is kind of a mix where the manufacturer may outsource only some of their patient support services to an outside vendor or outside vendors. So for example, they will outsource access but not adherence. Or there can also be cases where the manufacturer will perform the front end facing interactions with patients and HCPs, but the vendor will perform the back end functions, such as following up with payers. And then in-source, that's typically where the manufacturer is able to take all services in-house using their talent and their technology. So those are the 3 that we see today, and I'll move on to my next question. I feel like I've been really revving this up. Our last question for our panelists today is, based on your expertise, which patient support program approach do you feel is best across the specialty drug continuum? And we'll start with Jeff.
Thanks, Bridget. I always say that patient support programs are like patients. No 2 are alike, and you really have to spend time up front matching the functionality, matching the services of your patient support program to the needs of not only your patient population, but also the healthcare professionals who are going to engage, as well as the dynamics of the product that you're launching. And I'm excited because the days of just staffing a large call center and equipping them with telephones and fax machines, I think, are quickly coming to an end. And manufacturer clients are becoming much more engaged earlier in the process to really have a detailed design that meets their specific needs. These are living and breathing programs. And so evaluating what type of program you need to have, whether it's outsourced, hybrid, in-sourced, it really comes down to a number of different factors. First, I think you have to look at what is it the product and where are they at in the life cycle. If you're launching a product and it's early on, you're going to have to be a much more sort of talent-oriented program, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time up front educating payers on how to cover the product. You're going to have to educate prescribers on how to prescribe for the drug, and you're going to have to educate patients on how to administer the drug and what the drug can do for them. As that product moves, or that drug moves through its life cycle, it becomes much more technology oriented, in that you can leverage the power of technology efficiencies, because many of the payers will have had it established on formulary. Prescribers will know how to prescribe it, and so that won't be as complex, and patients will be much more knowledgeable about the drug itself. In addition, you have to evaluate, again, your patient population. Is this a drug that can be self-administered? Is there a caregiver involved? And what are the needs from a healthcare professional? Are there certain things are there step edits? Are there prior authorizations? All of these will go into the design of your patient support program. Thirdly, you need to look at the market that you're launching into. Are you first in class? Are you entering into a competitive market? What are the competitors offering as it relates to patient support program? All of these factors determine how you launch a program. And then finally, you have to look internally. What are your resources? Do you have the capability of insourcing these types of programs? What is your risk tolerance? How close do you want to be to that patient prescriber experience? We are excited that our manufacturing clients are becoming much more engaged earlier on. They want to be involved, and they're demanding a much higher level of transparency amongst their patient support programs. They want to understand how those patient programs are performing, what's working well, what's not working well, and how can they be improved. And so we spend a lot of our time with our manufacturing clients, understanding their needs and really taking that detailed, customized approach at developing our patient support programs. And then finally, the market's evolving as well. It used to be that there was a traditional specialty product, and that would require a comprehensive white glove type model. But as we look towards the future, we see that there's a pipeline filled with what we call specialty light, or what we call hybrid tweener type products. These are products that are not at the same price point as a traditional specialty, but also have some unique needs that require a service or support program. And so because they don't have that same level of cost, they are much more open to using technology to address those needs. So for example, we at AssistRx created a product called Co-Assist. And this is really geared towards that hybrid specialty light product, where a physician doesn't have a lot of time to spend in terms of helping that patient get access. So they want to be able to e-prescribe that product and take advantage of all the e-services that we've developed, and that product ending up in either a mail order pharmacy, specialty pharmacy, or a retail pharmacy. And for us to sort of take advantage of the technology on our side and communicate with the patient where they're at. So whether it's using texting, mobile app, whatever the case may be. And so it's, Co-Assist is just one example of new and innovative models that are being developed to address that new breed of product that's coming to the marketplace. With that, I'll just kick it over to Hugh, Jen.
So great, Jeff. And I agree with you 100% on all the points that you talked about. The model is absolutely very, very important, on which you're going to be providing services on, as well as the delivery of your product. And then meeting both patient and physician where they need to be met, whatever the point that is most important. So definitely looking at all those aspects is absolutely necessary. The other side of that, though, and the other piece, if you would, the other half, is who is your partner that's delivering this model, that's working within your model. And you may be looking at one single partner, you may be looking at several different partners to deliver this model. So it's key to understand who those providers are that are providing these services. And one of the things that I think is very, very important is that you look at that partner. Are they consultative? So are they willing to bring different ideas to the table, especially as you're looking at the life cycle of your product? Can they facilitate the very early launch? Can they help at mid-cycle? And then can they facilitate at the end of the life cycle, so that one, you're not having to spend millions of dollars in the different model, but that you actually have a partner who can bolt on and bolt off, if you would, the different aspects of the services and the talent, as we've mentioned before, to support that particular product. The other side of that is your partner investing in the development of their organization? What is their pathway? What is their roadmap? Can they articulate that to you? Have they demonstrated that they have invested in it, or is it all talk? And so that your product can actually be kept within this model. The other piece of that is transparency. Can you get the data that you need out of it? And then what is happening around the provider, the partner that you're working with? Are they open to integrating with other organizations to bring about the services that you want to bring in throughout that life cycle of your product. So I think those are absolutely key. And then goes the execution. So can they, one, deliver? Can they deliver it on time? Do they have a methodology for their process? Can they clearly explain that to you so that you as the manufacturer understand what phase 1, 2, and 3 is? And then as they marry in the talent, where are they actually bolting it on and then taking it off? And what are going to be the performance points so that they understand and can clearly delineate, yes, it's now time to take that service offering off and move forward into a different model. So those are my thoughts anyway. And I'll turn back over to you, Bridget.
Yeah, so both of you have great, interesting thoughts here. Something that I heard multiple times is that we are seeing manufacturers' needs evolve because they want to best support their patients and HCPs, and that they need a partner that will be able to meet those needs. So I have a follow-up question for you, Jeff. You said that manufacturers will want more transparency from their partners. How else do you think patient support programs may evolve over the next 2 years, and what should manufacturers be looking for from their partner?
Well, I believe we're certainly in this cycle of evolvement of these types of programs. As I mentioned earlier on, the days of setting up a large call center with more and more people are hopefully coming to an end. You know, the unfortunate reality is that manufacturers have, in many cases, have a love-hate relationship with their patient support program providers. And it's because they see the cost of these programs increasing year over year and the performance decreasing. And that narrative has to change. We talk about that oftentimes here at AssistRx, that we as a patient support program provider need to be able to demonstrate the value that we bring to our manufacturer clients every single day. And that is based on our ability to show that patients are better off when they come through our program versus when they go direct to pharmacy, whether it's specialty or retail. And if we can't demonstrate that and prove that every single day, then we're not being the partner that our manufacturer clients want us to be. And as Jan said, it starts with transparency. It starts with their ability to understand how patients are flowing through our program and what's working well and what's not working well. It then involves partnership. So addressing the barriers to access together, coming up with innovative solutions. It's our job to provide you, the manufacturer clients, with the data to make informed decisions. And then it's our job to execute on that data to understand how changes can be impactful. And so what I believe is going to happen over the next 2 years is we're going to have a lot more attention focused on transparency. It's going to be incumbent upon us to be able to provide data so that our clients can make informed decisions. And so that's why we're investing in tools such as Snowflake to be able to bring disparate sets of data together and combine that in a way that we can determine and make informed decisions. There's going to be a much greater emphasis placed on how do we leverage these technology tools that we've talked about to bring down the cost of providing these services. It used to be if you had a backlog of patients, you just went out and hired more FTEs. That's not a model that's sustainable. That's not a model that our manufacturer clients want us to engage with. They want us to leverage technology so that the people are using that technology and we're leveraging the greatest capabilities of the people to be able to engage directly with these patients and get them on therapy. And so you're going to see more and more adoption of these tools. You're going to see a lot more of these, what Jan was talking about, hybrid models, where we and the manufacturer are working together in the same CRM platform so that we understand what that patient status is in real time. You're going to see a lot more data interoperability because there's such a variety of stakeholders involved in that patient onboarding experience that understand, that need to have understanding of where that patient is real time. And so the ability to leverage APIs, to integrate data sets, to set up dashboards or portals so that we can understand proactively when patients are hitting barriers and overcome those barriers are critically important. I don't think we're going to see a lot of programs where they're mandatory because patients have many, many different ways in which they want to engage. So the idea is, well, how do we capture those patients and deliver services when they need those services? That's going to create a need for us to become much more innovative. How do we engage with retail pharmacies and make sure that patients who are there understand that their patient support programs exist in case they need them? And so the nice thing is, from what I see, is that there's a number of new technologies either out there in the market today or coming to the market that we can leverage to bring to bear and solve some of these problems that have plagued our industry for so long. And so I'm very excited about the direction we're headed. And I'm very excited about the partnerships that we're establishing out there in the marketplace. Bridget?
Thank you, Jeff. So it looks like we have just a few minutes remaining. I would like us to get to some of the questions in the chat here. So now I will open up the floor to questions.
The first one I see here is from Diane. Are there coverage limitations when a patient uses telehealth, for example, in-network versus out-of-network? I will send that one over to Jan.
Yes, there is. The plans cover the video, the technical components, telehealth, just as they cover any other benefit structure. So if you're in network, it's at one cost. If it's out of network, you may have a higher out-of-pocket cost, but they are handled the same. We've seen some of the telehealth companies go out who are just trying to capture that cash environment and be able to provide support for those patients at a much lower cost. But traditionally, they are handled very much like our regular benefit structure.
Thank you, Jan. I'll get to the next one here. Okay, sounds like something that we mentioned. So the question is from Ashley. The question is, you mentioned only 21% of physicians can correctly explain drug pricing info. Why do you think this is, and how do your tools help HCPs with this? I'll send that to Jeff.
Thanks, Bridget. As I mentioned, I like to joke that physicians went to med school, not business school, and as such, they have a challenge trying to interpret the information. But the reality is, I think, we're asking physicians to do a lot, and there's general consensus that they have anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes with a patient, and in that time period, they need to diagnose the patient, they need to discuss a treatment plan with the patient, they need to write any type of orders or prescriptions associated with that treatment plan. And so they don't really have a lot of time to really spend with them explaining what their benefits are. And the reality is that a lot of the drugs that we deal with have complex benefits. There's oftentimes a step edit, prior authorization. Many times the patient is hitting they may have a coinsurance, hitting their out-of-pocket max. And all of these factors really combine to determine what level of coverage that patient has and what level of access they have to the product itself. And in many cases, that's only good at that point in time. That could change depending upon where they're at in their out-of-pocket max. So physicians, I think in general, want to make sure that they're prescribing a drug that a patient can get access to, that they don't have to then come back later and understand and try to write another prescription, but they don't necessarily have the time or the knowledge base to really interpret that. So what we try to do at AssistRx is really twofold. One is we try to take the friction out of the process, and I always use a phrase MEGA, which is just make it go away. And what we're trying to do for the physician is just to make sure that the patient is taken care of and allow them to refer that patient into a patient support program and know and be assured that that patient is being managed and taken care of appropriately. The second piece is is to provide them with tools that they can easily understand. So, as part of our iAssist platform, we include what we call our ABV, and we're providing that data in a consumable format so that they don't need to have that really detailed technical understanding of what benefits are. They can, there are certain things that they need to know. Is this drug covered? And if so, what is the patient's out-of-pocket responsibility? And if there's a PA, serve them up the PA. So those are simplification of the tools that really help them understand and allow them to navigate easily through this process. And so there's a variety of things that we continue to involve as more and more technologies become available. But in the most part, we are trying to simplify the process and reduce the friction of the patient onboarding process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, I see another question here from Joseph. Have you seen a change in uptake in using digital solutions during the pandemic among both patients and physicians? Jan, how about you start that one out?
Great, thank you. Yes, Joseph, we've definitely seen an uptake. We've seen an uptake, during the heavy confinement during COVID, and we continue to expect to see that trend as we move forward. As we all have moved into a very virtual environment, such as today, patients with their healthcare have felt that very same thing and have found that it's able to streamline. They can actually do it when they're not at work. For example, they can do it after hours and respond and put information in through portals, through engagement sites, et cetera, both patients and physicians. We see providers responding back to patients' questions in later parts of the evening or early mornings before they either start their rounds or they even start their office practice. And certainly the connectivity and then being able to actually see face-to-face. I know, for example, my own primary care physician meets me in a face-to-face conference and goes over lab results for me or with me, as we talk about my care plan for the coming year. So we've definitely seen that uptake both within our manufacturer partners and the utilization from providers and patients, as well as in our personal life. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Jan. I see another one.
I'm going to add to that, Bridget. Yeah. Obviously, deploying digital tools for both patients and prescribers is something that we've been doing a long time at AssistRx. And when the pandemic first hit, what we saw was, everyone pivoted to a remote work environment, including our prescribers. And, the one thing that a lot of them didn't have at home was a fax machine. And so it really necessitated them adopting digital tools to be able to help patients get access. And so we saw an immediate uptake in our digital solutions, and that was great. And the question I always had was will this continue post-pandemic? And obviously 2 years later, we still see that uptake, and we continue to see the uptake. And I think primarily one is they've become used to now using digital versus paper. And two is as we constantly add more and more functionality, they get more and more greater value out of these tools. And to go back to the old ways of using a paper enrollment form and a fax machine to manage this population is becoming less and less likely. So we're very excited. We've seen a tremendous increase in traffic to both our provider portals as well as our patient engagement tools. And so I expect that to just continue as these tools become readily or more adopted in the marketplace.
And Jeff, I just want to piggyback one more thing on that. So we've definitely seen that adoption, and Jeff's leadership and direction and thinking about that has really moved our organization forward. One of the things we've had to keep in mind, though, in all of our applications is when you have either an elderly population or a population that does not have the ability to connect technically, whether that's because their internet services are not what they should be and they keep dropping off, et cetera. We have had to build into all of our solutions, whether that's a patient copay or patient engagement site around patient assistance and gathering information, the ability to have a caregiver, whether it be daughter, son, etc., or someone else that can help facilitate the patient. We ask them to acknowledge who that is. We ask for that patient to give them rights, and that connectivity can then continue. But those are things to keep in mind as you think about your particular drug and your patient population. Who else needs to be involved if you do have a population that is not able to use technology for whatever reason?
Wonderful. Okay, so it looks like we have time for one more question. It's actually 3 questions from Suzanne. So first question is, has your EBV program evolved toward the medical benefit? Second part, are you finding AI machine learning API helpful for rare disease? And third part, do you help companies set up a hybrid program, or let us deal with our end and you plan on your end? So I'm guessing that's how we would manage hybrid models. So, quite a few things to answer here. Let's have Jeff start it off.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer the first question, and then Jan, I'll kick it over to you. But yes, the ABV tool that we're constantly developing and evolving is both inclusive of the drugs that are delivered under the pharmacy benefit as well as the medical benefit. And those two benefits have their unique challenges that we have to address, so it's not that we can call it the same tool, but we recognize the need to understand a patient's benefits and where they're at in their coverage is equally as important under medical as it is under pharmacy. And so we have partnered with a number of different data sources that power our ABV tool and provide a much more comprehensive understanding of that patient's coverage for drugs under the medical benefit. We continue to expand upon those partnerships to bring in additional data sources. And the goal is not to necessarily take a large claims data set and try to predict what that patient's coverage is. Because as Jan mentioned, in many cases, these are new product launches, so you don't have a claim history necessarily to look at, or they may be for a very small patient population where you don't have enough of a claims data set to really accurately predict what that coverage is going to be. But this is, so we've sort of strayed away from that, but more focused on partnering with other data sources that have the real-time sort of benefits designed as it relates to these programs and therapies, and take that on a very specific granular level to be able to match the patient with their benefits with the coverage for that particular drug. So the answer to that question is an absolute yes. The second question was, if you could repeat that, Bridget.
Sure. The second part of the question, let me scroll here. Are you finding AI machine learning or API helpful for rare disease?
So, my personal pet peeve is AI and ML are two of the most overrated or overused buzzwords in today's environment. So, obviously, the more data mining we can do, the better we're able to match patients with therapies. And so from an identification of trying to understand where patients who would be good candidates for these particular rare and orphan diseases are and exist, and connecting them with those therapies, that's where AI and machine learning can play a role there. But what we have found is with rare and orphan diseases, and specifically once that patient's been identified, we want to make sure that they are getting that sort of white glove treatment, because so oftentimes the disease states that they're being treated with are very complex. These therapies are very expensive, and it just necessitates a hand-on approach. And so that's something that machine learning and AI, that's great for large data sets, large patient populations, but not necessarily geared towards managing smaller rare populations. Again, impactful when it comes to trying to pick that needle out of the haystack, trying to find that one patient that's going to match up with your therapy, but not necessarily after that patient's been identified. And as far as APIs is a different animal. So APIs, we have, it should become the norm in terms of how we integrate with other stakeholders. And when you think about the patient journey as it relates to these rare and orphan diseases, or even, specialty therapies, they involve a lot of different stakeholders. Starting, with the prescriber, oftentimes including a hub, oftentimes including a financial assistance provider, clinical advisors, nursing, specialty pharmacies, a whole host of people. And the way you communicate is through API and the ability to exchange data real time. And that's something that any modern patient support program should be. It should be in your fabric. This should not be a heavy lift to set up an API to be able to exchange data. Jan, did you have any comments there? And I'll let you answer the third part.
Yeah, and I know we're short for time, but I agree with everything you said on the first two questions. The one thing I want to address very quickly on the hybrid, and I believe any organization that's offering a hybrid model is going to want to engage with you, the manufacturer, early on to understand exactly what do you want out of that relationship. What part do you want to own? Do you want to own directly speaking to the physician and to the patient, or do you only want to engage with the patient? Do you want your hub model to be utilizing and providing information around the benefit investigation, the prior auth, et cetera? So engage early, bring it to the table what you want to own, and then also have a clear understanding, are there phases, are there stages? Do you want in the beginning to actually have your hub organization provide you the technical platform, the CRM, if you would, and then for you to be able to move out on your own later on? So there's phases to this too, as you look at how you want to develop out your model. So again, looking for consultation, sit down with them, explain to them your vision, and then go from there. Do not do it in a silo, because you'll be very disappointed, I believe, in the back end of when you go to launch. So Bridget, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Jan. We are right at time. And fantastic job. There are actually a few questions we did not get to today, so we will be sending out those questions and responses in a follow-up email. Also, look out for that email, because we are including a link to register for part 2 of our series. Part 2, which is happening on March 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can register for that by looking at that email or just by visiting assistRx.com. Lastly, we have a white paper associated with this webinar series, Today's Patient Support Programs for Specialty Therapies, Meeting 2022 HCP and Patient Expectations. That white paper will be made available through our follow-up email and is also available at assistRx.com. So thank you all so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you on the 9th.